In this segment, we're going to look at the second step of the form building process in HR Actions, or the General Fields tab, where you can see the focus is on the date and attachment settings for the action. The first option we have here is pre-populate effective date. Every action has an effective date, and technically the effective date is tied to the reason code in HRMS. So for instance, merit increase, promotion, new hire, typically termination type stuff. So on most of those type actions, you probably don't want to pre-populate the action effective date, because you want the initiator to think about when the action is truly going to be effective. Now, you could pre-populate on forms like a handbook acknowledgement, or maybe an update to emergency contact information or something like that, because there's no real effective date for those changes. But anything with job or pay, you're typically going to want to uncheck this and leave it unpopulated. Next option is pre-populate save to HRMS date. The save to HRMS date is a date that you can have on your form where you can say, hey, we're not allowed to post or push this data back to HRMS until on or after this date. Typically used where we've got clients that may use third-party payroll, or say Sage 100, where maybe we're feeding things from a file feed or updating in some sort of interface, and we don't want to put the information into the system where it might feed it and then pay somebody early, or use the give them the new rate before it's due. In HRMS payroll, you can push changes in with a future date, and it won't process the new rate until on or after that date on the payroll side. So you can pre-populate, and again, that works for save to HRMS. The other option here is hide save to HRMS date and set to effective date. So in your situation, if you don't care and you want the information, if Sage HRMS payroll or it's an acknowledgement type form, you can pre-populate the effective date. You can hide, save, and set it to the effective date to where they don't even see it, and it's not an issue. As soon as that form is saved and approved, you can click the diskette, and it's going to update immediately into HRMS for you. Fourth one here is the initiated date, just basically a date timestamp when that form was initiated, date and time. And then this last option here is you can press submitter comments. On each action, you've got at the very top of the form, right underneath the header information, you've got a submitter comment section where it's an open text area where the submitter of the action can provide additional information on why they're submitting it. So, hey, I'm asking for a promotion for my employee or a merit increase or something like that. I can provide comments on why I'm actually submitting this action for approval. If you don't want that section, so again, if we've got something like a handbook acknowledgement, we can suppress that so the form's a little bit cleaner without these extra areas of text. You also have up to 5 upload slots. So for instance, if I check this box, then I can give it a label, and maybe it's supporting documentation. Depending on the form, you may have different pieces of information you want them to upload, basically like an attachment in an email. You can say supporting documentation, or maybe you want a copy of their driver's license, a voided check stub for a direct deposit, whatever it might be. You can create that upload slot, up to 5 of them, give them each a custom label. You can require it, meaning that they have to attach something in order to initiate this action. The system won't know that if you're requiring a check stub, that what the attachment is actually is a check stub. But at least they won't be able to initiate without attaching something. Then you can review it. If they uploaded something incorrectly, you can kick it back to them. You can save it to HRMS and display in ESS. What this does, and you can see here, if I click on this View Edit Codes, for my employer, I've got something like a letter of appreciation, first report, these things. You create these codes in HRMS, and then basically once they're in here and the system stays synced, you can display this code, tie it to a code, and then when you push this action back, it will update the attachment section in HRMS. You can see here, the appreciation letter like we just looked at, and then I can tell whether or not I want to display an employee self-service on that side. So that's how you can do that. Again, up to 5 slots. If you need more than that, we've had clients where they do supporting documentation where maybe they have 3 or 4 different pieces of documentation scanned into one document, so you can get it all into one thing. I think there is a 4 meg limit on the attachment, so you want to scan it at a lower resolution just so you can see that. Down here, allow file attachment modifications. If you want, again, individuals like we talked about on the audit trail, if we've got where you want, maybe I submit it and I've got an attachment, which is basically a letter outlining why my employee should be promoted or whatever it might be, then is up that hierarchy. Maybe my manager read what I wrote and want to add their comments to it before it goes to the next approver. So they can download that attachment, make their changes to it, reattach it, and it will allow, those modifications to be updated in that, and then also enable the audit trail for the file attachments. So you can allow them to take that, maybe it's a Word document again, supporting why I'm requesting this change. They can add their comments to it and then resubmit. And then the last thing down here, select default employer for a new hire form. So on the general setup, as we talked about in the last one, if we say that form is going to be a new hire form, this section will pop up. It won't show up on any other forms beyond the new hire. But what this does is you can choose, from that which the default employer is. So if you've got 5 employers, you may want to set, this for employer 1, fill it all out. Maybe it's different between employer 1 and employer 2. So you'd make a copy of it, make whatever changes you have, and set the default employer for the new hire form here in that general setup. What that does is then when they open that form, it automatically populates with the code tables and everything associated with that employer in HRMS. You don't have to do that. What you would do is when you do a new hire form where this isn't set, one of the first things you're going to have to do is choose the employer from a drop down, and then it will refresh with the code tables and everything associated with that employer at that time. This will just save you a little bit of time on the front end when you're creating that. And that's it for the General Fields tab. We'll do the database fields in the next video. Thank you.